Thank you. So welcome everybody. This is a meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council's Scrutiny Committee. My name's Councillor Sam Casey Raywright and I'll be chairing this. I'm a new chair to the Scrutiny Committee. As you all know, I'm sure by now, but this meeting is live streamed and is recorded. And just a bit of housekeeping, because I know we've got a couple of new members and the fire exits are out of the door and then round to your right. And then there's the door on the left, it's all signed. And please keep your mobiles on silent, put them on silent now. Thank you very much. So we'll go straight to the agenda. Chair's announcements. I don't have any announcements to make other than those I have. We've got apologies for absence, item 2 from Councillor Turner. We don't have any others. No, it's good. Good to see everybody here. Maybe then. And then going to the minutes of the last meeting, and again, there are a couple of new members and me, I'm a new member too as chair. So those of us, there are enough people here, I think, who were at the last meeting to approve those minutes. So are we? Those who are here, are you all happy with those minutes? Happy to approve them?
Yeah, happy.
Good.
Agreed.
Do you need someone to propose it?
I'll propose it.
Have we got a seconder? Super. Thank you. Declaration of interest. So this is to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, and non-registrable. I'll say that interests or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda. No? Good. The next item is urgent business. I don't have any. Move on to public participation, and I don't believe we have any people registered to participate. So good. Cantering on then. Item 7 is the work schedule and dates for all South Scrutiny meetings. So you've got the work schedule in your minutes, your meeting pack. And again, it does say, don't forget that although the dates are confirmed, items under consideration are subject to be withdrawn or added or rearranged. Do we have any comments or additional items that we think we might want to go put on the agenda or comments?
Well, another question, if I may. I didn't know whether to put it now or under the minutes. I read the minutes and there are quite a lot of things that the Scrutiny Committee asked for. One of them was an update on the enforcement situation, and I can see that's appeared in the work programme.
Yes.
But there are also quite a lot of queries on financial reporting back. But I can't see where we're doing that. It doesn't come under one of the work.
Yeah, and it was.
I was expecting a verbal update at this time, from of the questions that were asked last time, or is that not? How will it be given?
Indeed,
things we were asked for.
And I think it's something that we need to make note of, that you asked for a verbal update on 116 to 120 for Broadway, which is the property portfolio. And yes, I can see that. Hang on a second. And the committee requested an update on the quarterly performance of the corporate plan, which we will be getting. That's fine. The budget and how that will come out, and then the outturn figures. So I don't know if I see Monitoring Officer Nick has got head of legal. Nick, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, Chair, only to support what you've just said. Firstly, that these are areas which have standard reporting established under the code of practice anyway on the financial side. On the specifics though, members may also be aware that Simon Hewins, the 151 officer, was unfortunately unwell for quite a lengthy period of time. So I think this is, well, I know this is on the list of things that I've got to speak to him about going forward. So I'm afraid the fault partly lies with me, but also the unfortunate circumstances of him being unwell recently. So I think some of what you should have got today, you're not getting for that reason. So I'll apologise to all members, including the speaker, of course. But we will follow up with that, and we'll make sure that you receive an update on those bits which aren't covered by the standard reporting going forwards. Chair, I hope that's helpful and not just an interruption.
No, that's very helpful. I think the update or a verbal update on the Broadway I don't think that's covered by Simon's portfolio. So that I think that needs to go on at some point.
I think I can add to that because I'm pretty sure the previous chair got an update by email from Andrew Busby, so I could probably forward that one. So I think he updated her on where we were at.
All right, and if scrutiny members have any questions or queries on that, we can bring them up at the next meeting. Would that be appropriate? So in public.
Can I just check the next meeting is the 4th November?
Yes.
And there's nothing in between the two?
There isn't, is there?
No.
I don't think so.
Is that a normal pattern? Sort of 2 or 3 a year, having not done this before?
It's normally between, I'd say we normally have up to 6 a year.
Oh, right. Okay. So this is an unusual gap.
Yeah,
I was just curious as to why the next one was November, because I'm used to sort of monthly meetings of the planning committee. So this seemed like quite a long gap.
There are some reasons as far as I know for that. One of them is that's when the LGR reports are coming in and things like that. So that's scheduled in that sense. I think there's an opportunity possibly, Nick might come in a second, I see, to put one in if necessary. I have a couple of things that I've spoken to officers about putting on the agenda. One is about what will happen with property in relation to Promosh Gifford.
The next scrutiny meeting was on
the 25th of September.
25th of September.
Yeah. I thought
It's just on that work schedule, the date you're seeing is when those reports will come forward, not when the meetings are.
Right. So there is one on the 25th
of September.
Okay, good. Hopefully I'll be able to do that.
Check.
So when you see November 2025, that means that's when that report will come forward.
Thank you.
What we tend to have is August designating people who are away for summer and things, and then September it starts to kick in again. And so we put one in September before the cabinets.
But we don't necessarily have anything scheduled for September as far as maybe cabinet goes. But yes, just as an update to the committee, I have talked to officers about a couple of items that I think I circulated to you all by email about bringing some items about what will happen to some of the property that the council owns in light of local government reorganisation. One of the big ones being the property of Promosh Gifford. So we're talking through that and bringing that onto the work schedule as well.
Yeah.
But if there are any, I know that Councillor Barlow, did you want to say something or something to add to this?
Yeah. Unless I read the minutes wrong, I thought I saw that it was suggested that a report on Cornerstone would be here today. And I may have read it wrong, but I just made that note. And I think when we did talk about the Cornerstone last year, we talked about having Cornerstone coming back on an annual basis. I'm sure we talked about Cornerstone back June last year, or am I misremembering?
Based on my memory, they came quite recently, and I believe the next time they were due to come is in 6 months' time.
Right, okay.
So it's not on an annual basis, because obviously we want every 6 months because they've got a plan and we just want to make sure that their plan is going according to what they said they would. But I'm sure they came back 2-3 months ago, so next one will be another 3 months or so.
So I guess it's just making sure it's on our work plan. Cool.
But can I suggest that somebody goes through the minutes of the last one and checks all the things that scrutiny asked for there, and they appear on the next agenda?
I've done that. In fact, I highlighted it in yellow, and most of it was that the financial things that Nick has told us about, and then the update on the Broadway, and then planning enforcement. So those were.
Wasn't there something on section 106?
Yeah, so there's the financial and planning.
That was a financial bit rather than planning bit, was it? Okay.
Was it member? Right. I don't think there was something on section 106 that I can see on this list actually.
No, I can't remember exactly. Right.
But again, happy to take something on email and then put that on the work program, discuss with officers, and we'll talk about when we can put it on the work program.
Well, there are also things like the discussion on working with the ISCB, which I think has been asked for a while.
I think the committee needs to maybe be a bit more defined about what it wants in relation to that.
Very true.
And if there's anything that anybody wants to say about that today, or again, email it to me. I can take that to officers and we can then see exactly what it is that we need to. Is in relation to spending the civil, wasn't it? Or the,
I can't remember. It's on. I think it's on the website. It's non-specific.
It is
date.
very non-specific on your work program. You're right.
Yeah. Okay.
So can we leave that to discussions outside of this and bring it? Okay, good. Nothing else to be.
Yeah, I've got something else.
Go on.
I just looked back and I thought I read something right. And okay, I'm not trying to dismiss what you said, but it does say Scrutiny Commission notes a report will come back in June on the future strategy for Cornerstone. So now that was the end of the last notes, if I'm reading them right.
Do we know when the Cornerstone will come back? Because it's obviously not on this one, and the next meeting is due in September, so I'm assuming we can say that will.
I can take that away and put a
Thank
date
you.
on the work programme, and I'll check
That's
with
very
the officers
good.
involved.
That's great. Thank you. And one
Yes, go on.
one thing we've talked about several times is about procurement strategy. And in fact, I think we first asked for it in July 2023. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to look at the procurement strategy. I appreciate that, with LGR things may well change, but that's still potentially another couple of years away. And one thing I'm particularly interested in procurement strategy is how it's linked as part of our net zero commitments. Because whilst we are focusing on scope 1 and 2, the message we send out to our suppliers through our procurement strategy on net zero is quite important, in my view.
Very much on that particular issue you want an update on, because we have a procurement strategy. So a report against that strategy is what you want in relation to the climate targets.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Nick, do you want to come in on that?
Just to say, Chair, so firstly, again, the lead officer on procurement is Mr. Hewins. I know that work is ongoing at the moment. We had the procurement regulations that came out within the last number of months, which are being worked through at the moment in order to make sure that we are compliant with the legislation. I don't know, honestly, if that's had an impact upon the delivery of any further reports, but the foundation is obviously the lawfulness. One of the things that is in there is some changes to what local authorities can take into account when measuring different contracts. So for example, in the past, it was purely on best value, as members will recall. Now there are some other factors which can be brought in slightly differently, and a report will be coming to Scrutiny and to Cabinet as that is worked through, and as we finalise on that, and Mr. Hewins does so. On top of that, I would say LGR has been mentioned already by someone. That has a direct and significant impact upon contracts. What we're currently starting to work on as a senior strategic management team is also about the ways in which we look at what's called novation, so transfer arrangements in the contract, making sure that contracts are compliant, and all contracts which come through which are major will receive the normal examination, and that will on depending on the value or the political relevance include scrutiny. So I'm not sure that this is probably the time to start an additional piece of work, because those things are in train already in order to tie in the new regulations, the impacts of local government reorganisation as well. So Chair, perhaps again, I'm afraid, sorry, another thing for us to talk about offline
Yes.
With Mr. Hewins, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think as far as I know, that Councillor Ball is really looking backwards in terms of what we've achieved so far in relation to that and our goals, and whether it's been in line, and then any recommendations for the future. And I think that would inform LGR probably anyway. Am I right in something that?
Exactly, backwards, and also how it impacts our decision making at the moment. So I think what Bennett said there was really interesting in terms of how it impacts our choices and how those things actually link together or don't. Do they undermine our climate targets or not, unintentionally?
Okay, good. Thank you. So if there's nothing else to be said on that item, we can go to the substantive item, which is the Warehag annual delivery plan for the council under its the council plan, strategic plan, and we've got the cabinet member, Councillor Vaughan, is here. I believe we've also got the leader, Councillor Roy, online, and the officer is Tim. Or are you? But I just want to say before we go any further with this, and Rachel maybe, because there are new members here, I'm really looking to take away some very clear, succinct, hopefully, but clear recommendations or points that we want to give to Cabinet and to the Cabinet member and Cabinet generally, because of course, as you may not know, there is an item in the next Cabinet meeting where they have updates from committees. So it's really about sort of, we can have a discussion, but we need to think about some points we want to, if any. We don't have to take any, we don't have to make any recommendations or points or issues that we want to bring to Cabinet. So just please think about it. And I will hand over to, who is it? Councillor Rawlins who's going to
Thank you, Chair. So good evening, everyone. So now our corporate plan has become our way ahead council plan. And what we're looking at here is the delivery plan for the year ahead, 2025-26. So within our plan, we seek to make sure that we put forward all our aims, that they're funded, that they fit within our finance and budgets and so forth. And what we're trying to do is to resource priority deliverables. So a year plan with rigorous prioritization, looking at things like how much bang do we get for our buck, what we're trying, how we can best deliver on our aims within the funds that we have and the timescale that we have. So through this, we're also seeking to measure progress and delivery as best as we can. And there's introduction here of a new reporting dashboard, which I think is a good move, and I think will be much more accessible, actually. And the whole thing is supported with digital marketing. So we've got some real-time updates getting out there. The plan and the delivery will be reported on the website. So the delivery plan is obviously in the context of our 5 themes, being nature, climate and nature, transparency and engagement, driving healthy, inclusive communities, homes and infrastructure, and financial stability with transformation. All of this obviously sits within a context of necessity of LGR and what that does to officers' time, and the fact that our horizon is somewhat truncated in this new world because there will be a future world. On this report, Cabinet is asked to approve it, so that's the context of the discussion. And you've got here each of some detail under each of the themes feeding into or being represented by the delivery plan, and some indication of how we report and measure it. I think that's the main things that I would want to say at this stage. There may be questions, and I'm happy to take those as they arise.
Thank you. Does Tim, do you want to say anything or add to that? Or Councillor Wayne, put your hand up there and see if you want to come in next.
Very politely putting my hand up. As you'll guess, I'll do big picture and Lee will do detail. It's our natural fit. I just wanted to add a couple of things to what Lee has said. One is about local government reorganisation. Yes, it's there, but it is kind of a couple of years away, and I think it's very important that we don't think of ourselves as a, quotes, zombie authority. We still have really important things to do, and we want to get on with our business as usual, so that what we hand over to whatever new authority takes over, we're handing over in a good state. And it might be that not all of our projects get finished and we're handing over those projects, but we want to focus on what our priorities are and what we were elected to do, because we're only halfway through, a little over halfway through our term. One specific I would say is about the dashboard, which Lee mentioned. I think in the past, we've had an infographic which has talked about the sort of nice things to mention. And one of my asks to the team when they're putting together the dashboard is that they think about the important things, and particularly what I refer to as the 4 o'clock in the morning things, the things that wake me up. Usually they're things like having somewhere to park our waste vehicles and worrying about having to attend scrutiny. But what are those 4 o'clock things, and how are we doing? Because we can all produce an infographic that says we've done all these lovely things, but there are 3 or 4 really big things that if we don't do those, then we're not really achieving what we're setting out to achieve. My final point is the purpose of this coming to scrutiny. It is coming to Cabinet soon, and we want you to make it better, because this is a fresh pair of eyes, and you will look at things in ways that we or the officers haven't looked at it. So this is an opportunity for scrutiny to make things better, and I hope that you grasp that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to add before we open it up to probably first questions or comment?
Probably open it up to the question.
Okay. So committee, any questions first of all? Maybe if we look at questions of clarification, which might be helpful first, or if there are any other comments. Who wants to go first? We start with Professor Cooper and then I'll come to you.
But, a question about timing, actually, because this is well set out, but it tells you the time frame for reporting, which is fair enough. But is that the only time scale we've got? I mean, I'd like to know when some of these things are going to show some sign of being done or being done, rather than just aspirations that will be reported on annually.
So I'm assuming, as it's an annual delivery plan, the aim is to get all these actions completed by the end of the year. Is that what we're looking at? What?
The general thing of it being in an annual plan would be we'll review it at that point. So there may be some things that may go longer. So after a review in a year, we will then be able to show what that progress is. As you said with the dashboards, what we'll be able to show and demonstrate is what the progress will be towards that happening. And that'll be the idea. So, but for the most part, things in there will be reviewed on an annual basis, unless they're shown at once.
And the sort of, so we're saying with the target is at the end of the year, but understanding that some of these things may go over that year.
Definitely.
And is there a way of noting the ones that I'm just thinking in terms of how we sort of measure that, because I think things can slide, can't they, if you don't have that. You're very, very much focused on this being an annual plan, and the most of those things will be completed by the end of the year. That's all of the things that will be longer the term. I think that's what, is that what you're saying?
If it would help in terms of maybe putting what some of these things could take longer, we could maybe look at a way of making that being the case. But just because they're in here as an annual plan, I suppose what we're saying is at the end of the year, we will look back and show what that progress is. Some of these things may complete within the year. In year, we may also get some other things that may come on during the year that we can then also add. But we can actually look at a way of making it clearer about what things could be going on for longer, if that's the case.
Is there something specific you could give an example, Sue, that you want to?
Well, I mean, it seems to me quite a lot of these things are going to be ongoing forevermore, rather than something you can say, right, we've done that, let's tick it off. Look at the first one, council-owned homes decarbonisation programme. I mean, there's no way you're going to complete everything in 1 year, is there? Obviously. Sorry. And the net zero programme will go on and on.
In that case, obviously, it's saying 100% by Q4 26-27.
Yeah.
I guess a fair question might be, so what might it be at the end of 25-26? But And inevitably with these things, the answer is going to be halfway because it's half the time. That's going to be challenging, but yeah.
So I'm sort of hearing that you're saying some more specific targets.
I'm happy to see how it works, to be honest, with all these new schemes. It's always a good idea to run them for a bit and see what happens, and then refine them later on. So we put that in.
Councillor Khan.
I'm just want to get clarity, and then I'll speak about the actual report. On the report, it says about financial implications, and it said there are no immediate financial implications associated with the report. So are we saying to implement this plan, there is no money, there is no cost to it?
I think what it's saying is that this is supported by our budget, which we have approved, and therefore it is a resource. I mean, it's not suggesting a radical departure from what we have agreed financially.
So at the moment, to implement this plan, there is no additional cost. It's all been. The other thing I was going to say in regards to the, I think it might help, was, you know, everything's in one sort of colour or whatever. It'd be good if we can have some priority, just in terms of these are the ones that we're going to be focusing on. These are the key plans or key initiatives first, because I think that would just be easier, more visually acceptable to say, okay, these are the top 5 we're going to go for. So at the moment, there's quite a lot here that you're trying to achieve. So what is your big 5 that you're going to go for? I think that would be add a bit of clarity to the report.
Yeah. I think in a way that perhaps echoes something of what David was saying about there are some things which we just drop the ball.
Let's say that. Let's say that these are the key 5 areas.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so Councillor Topley and then Councillor Gregory.
Are we doing this in order? So are we now talking about the first one, the climate change and nature recovery?
I think right now we can just ask questions of clarification. So if there's things you don't understand, but if you want to bring in comments on it's fine. And if you want to do the whole thing or specifics, please.
I'm just intrigued at how ambitious this is, because it's talking about in the preamble where we want to be, that we will have made significant progress by 2029 to become net zero in all our operations by 2030. I mean, is that in any way realistic? And given that buildings like this use a considerable amount, are we gas heated, these radiators? I haven't looked at the
boiler. Just stop? Yes, that is the agreed policy of the council.
But is it in any way realistic that we could achieve
what we're debating here is whether this plan is set out right, if it's deliverable under those targets. We're not debating those targets, they've been agreed and accepted, and they are council policy. So how are these, I mean, you could say that none of these show, for example, you could say none of these show to be in line with that target.
Yes,
so you
you'd have to be taking out gas heated central heating and that sort of thing and replacing it with heat pumps. But I don't see any of that in here. I mean, it would need very radical change to get anywhere near being net zero in 5 years. Massively radical. Heating swimming pools, this takes a vast amount of power and energy. I just can't see in this that we'd be getting anywhere close to it by 2030. I mean, I'm involved in property and energy use in property. That's what I do for a living. And I just can't see it here or any clarity.
There has been quite a lot of seeking of funds and investment in decarbonisation of our own leisure centres, our buildings. So that is something that has been undertaken. And I guess in terms of net zero, it's a question of how far can you go? If we've already put heat pumps or solar or whatever into the centres, we've done everything that we realistically can. what else can we do, I guess?
Well, I suppose one can be perhaps a little clearer that this is an aspiration rather than something that which we are moving towards, but we don't necessarily expect to get to it by 2030.
But can I just, before I come into Councillor Carr, can I just try and sort of crystallise what you're saying, if I'm right? You're sort of asking that we need to have shown here what progress these actions will make against those particular targets, but other targets. It's not all about climate change, and so other targets.
Yeah.
And you're not clear how these are making that getting to those targets.
I was just going to say, Councillor Topping has highlighted a very good question there, and one of the things that's a key issue about this document. If I was being political, which I'm not being, I think the reason why some of these are in there is so people can say, look what we're doing. Look, we're thinking about being net zero, etc., because then they can actually put on leaflets or put it onto manifestos and so on. I would say, if I was political, I would have said that, but I'm not. So I think some of these things here, like you said, has to be more defined and say what's realistic, what can be achieved, and others are, if we had more time, more resources, etc., and more time, we'll deliver this. So I think this needs to be more, as you say, more defined in terms of what can we actually do and what's more realistic. So some of these things are here, very, very aspirational. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So can I turn that into a question to Councillor Rawlins, if that's okay with the committee, just to say, how are you confident that these things are going to contribute to some of those targets, and how are you showing that? Is that what the performance reports are all about? I mean,
I would argue that these are directly linked into those aims and aspirations. And to be fair, and to Christian's point, I don't think this is saying, in terms of the progress or the achievement, that we are going necessarily to do this by that day. Overall, what it's saying is, for example, in the council-owned homes, we're aiming to get those there by the end of 2026, 27, but it's saying 100%. In other areas, it's talking about decarbonising our buildings and how far we have removed fossil fuels from council-operated leisure centres. Have we knocked them all off? Yeah. Because that's about the delivery. We knew where we wanted to go. We've succeeded in getting some funds. We've brought some forward and managed to invest in them, so that those are, as we deliver them, those are realistic, practical things that we are doing. Yeah. And this is trying to be 2 feet on the ground and trying to be pragmatic and realistic, rather than aspirational without any flight path to get there. Yeah.
So how will Scrutiny or the public or whoever see that progress if it's made? Where will that be seen or shown?
Well, that's where we go into the reporting, isn't it? So, will we have achieved the 5 leisure centres all being decarbonised by 27, 28, as it's set to measure?
If I'm wrong, I think what you're saying is that those targets are there. How will they inform the wider targets, the 2030 target, the higher strategic targets that we've got in the council plan?
Well, those I think are expressed in terms of making progress towards. So
that will be on the performance reporting, that dashboard type.
Yes, I think this is trying to break this down into practical deliverable areas. So in this case about leisure centres, this is what we're going to do. Because if it's not an action programme, is it? That's what it's trying to be. I take your wider point about how do we make the whole universe work to this. But
yeah, well, I mean, I think SEAC has covered a lot of those first pieces in terms of climate and biodiversity, etc. But
I just wonder if it's possible to actually have some sort of, starting now at 50% and the aim is to get to 100%, that we could say, be able to report each year, right, we've moved from 50% to 60%, or maybe this scales the other way.
So see the trajectory.
Towards our target of 100%. and that we have some sort of overall measure each year, and can say, well, you know, we're getting towards it.
If I could,
Yeah.
if I could from jumping there, so just help support members on that. So when we actually build the dashboards for leads reporting, there will be some baselines that will be put in.
Yeah.
So that will be your first start in terms of where they're starting from.
Mm.
So for year one, when we then get to the end of year one, we're basing the progress against those baselines.
Yeah.
Where we can show them in terms of where they've started and where they've got to.
Yeah.
So then all the way through, you're going to see that track and that trajectory and what the trend will be. We're just trying to highlight what those measures and metrics can be towards that.
Councillor Gregory, you want to?
I just wanted to ask on the page 19, I think it is, the action on thriving, healthy and inclusive communities. It's got domestic abuse sanctuary scheme, and the way you would measure progress is the number of referrals to South and Vale domestic abuse sanctuary scheme. Are we looking for more or less there?
That's a very, very good question. Clearly, we would hope to influence things to reduce the incidence, but I think the proper point here is probably more around, do we give support where things do happen, and that's so there's just in terms of the measurement, there's a quantification of how many did we refer, and then a narrative about how we think we're progressing in that context. And I agree with you, it's not just about how many referrals we make.
Thank you.
So there's something about being clear what success looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that applies generally.
The one above is similar as well, about antisocial behaviour. Again, what do we want from that?
Yeah, because an increase in cooking a really good thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. What Tim was saying about a baseline. You understand where we were, and you understand what we deliver year by year, and whether we seem to be moving in the right direction or it's going completely off track. What we can do about that.
Who else would like to go on?
There's lots of we've got those figures with the shaking hands and the fist and things. So there's quite a few which are relating to working in partnership. Just want to know, A, who will be driving that, and B, has there already been some discussion with some partners? So there's already some progress.
Yeah, and those are challenging. I mean, I think if I picked out one there, work in partnership with the creative sector to develop and adapt a culture, heritage and creative industries strategy for South and Vale. And it's tough to measure that. And so what it's saying is, the aim is to adopt the strategy. And did we do it or didn't we? You could get deeper into it and say, did we have the most cultural and creative and etc. strategy that it was possible to have? I think the real thing here is that there is a strategy. That's the product of what we're working towards, and we're trying to engage and involve others in informing that strategy before we set it.
I could add a little bit to support that as well. I think if we're talking about the iteration from the previous corporate plans to now, one thing that we didn't actually talk about a lot was about, well, as a council, we directly deliver a lot of things. There are some things that we deliver in partnership, and there are some things that we have influence on. So this plan is actually trying to show where we can have that partnership working, where it works better. In that case, so it shouts a bit more about that. So we didn't do that a lot in the previous.
So that's a distinction.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? I've got a question. Oh, Councillor Owen. Coming.
Yeah, on those last two questions, firstly, on Councillor Gregory's point, I think there's a life cycle with how you address social issues, and there's a at the beginning or in the early stages of the life cycle, you're trying to raise awareness and get people to access your service, and then later in the life cycle, you're hoping that you're pretty much dealt with it, and so you're measuring. You should be looking that your referrals are going down. So in terms of measuring these, I think both on domestic abuse and on antisocial behaviour, I think we're still in the cycle where we want referrals to go up, because that means that people know about our service and are using our service. Later in the cycle, we might want to say, actually, our target now is for those to reduce, because we think that the problem, we're on top of the problem and we wanting it to go down. But I think to answer Councillor Gregory's question about whether we want it to go up or down, I think in both of those cases, we're in the stage where we want it to go up, because that means people are aware of our service and using it. On the issue about partnerships, I was having a quick look through the documents as to where it says partnerships, and nearly all of those, I think, are existing partnerships. It's not we need to go out and find somebody to work with. Those that might be the case in some that I haven't noticed, but what this does, it's a recognition that a lot of the work we already do is in partnership, rather than pretending that it's all our own work. I'd love to take credit for what other organisations are doing, but I think in this case we're the good guys, and we're recognising that it's not all our own work. It's work we've done with other people, and that in itself is a skill, to be able to work with other people.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Gregory?
Oh, no, that's a good answer.
Who else would like to speak? The topping, maybe?
Yes, on the same page, Councillor Gregory just raised the domestic abuse sanctuary. It talks about work in partnership to enhance health and well-being in our communities. I was surprised not to that there isn't a comment there on the numbers using the leisure centres. I, for instance, use the leisure centre here, the White Horse Leisure Centre, and I go to the gym there. That doesn't. Have I missed something? Am I being gormless, or is it somewhere else? But I would have expected to see it in here somewhere. Not only the numbers that are attending the leisure centres, but who are they? What sort of people are using it? And it may be that there could be merit in looking into the types of people that are using it, and indeed the types that aren't, and perhaps what could be done to encourage the groups of people who aren't coming to the leisure centres to use them more and to get the benefit that I certainly feel I get from using the gym, or indeed the swimming pool. But I didn't see it here, but that may be because this isn't part of what you're doing.
I think quite a lot of effort went into that concept post-COVID, for example, where the numbers have dropped sharply, and the subscriptions and so forth have particularly dropped. And a lot of work has gone into that, both through the council and through the providers who have put marketing and promotional efforts into trying to drive those numbers back up, so that there's been a lot of recovery post-COVID. I guess maybe the feeling now is it's more about delivering improvements in those centres, and that if those improvements are made, then it's a more attractive facility to encourage more people to come along. But
it's something that's easily measurable. The great thing about having centres like that, you can count the people coming in, and also look at the different activities there. So how many are doing tennis, how many are using the gym, what have you. I can report on a personal basis that the use of the one round the corner from here is very significant. Yeah. And has improved greatly in the last 12 months, for instance. Yeah. It's a really good centre.
I guess it's what I think some of the issues that have been discussed, to my recollection in the past, is what progress are private facilities making? What's the latest in terms of media and sound and visual in the centres, and are we up to speed with that? And I guess this is part about trying to look at those practical improvements, what actually is important and whether we can make progress with them. But there is a linked issue here, certainly. Yeah.
But the council does have those statistics, doesn't it? It does have that data.
Yes, it is something we measure.
So linking, is that what you're saying? Linking this and some
I just thought it was something that we actually have some sort of measure of, we have control and knowledge of, and is something that is quite easy to measure. Whereas measuring what everybody else is doing, all the privately run ones, is more difficult. Whereas we've actually got our own ones, including, and this is a great example of one in this town in Abingdon, and one could look at the trends there. But more importantly, who's using it and who isn't, and what one could do to encourage the people that aren't using it to use it more. Yeah, because I think if anything's going to improve health in our communities, then
I think there has been a bit of effort gone into that in terms of trying to target discounts for people who might not be able to afford to come. But there's another dimension to what you're saying, which is how you're targeting your promotions and marketing and who you're trying to reach. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? I've got to go on Councillor Long.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a question about the financial page. One of the bubbles talks about exercising responsible and ethical investment. And I was curious about how we know how well we're doing that from what we're reporting and what we're measuring success, measuring progress on. Because it struck me that some of those are quite broad, and I just wondered if you could help me understand that.
Specifically, which one are you looking at there, James?
So on the financial stability and innovative transformation page, one of the three bubbles is exercise responsible and ethical investment. And if I look down then into the table below those bubbles, I can see broad things about talking, say, with compliance with Treasury Management Code of Practice and narrative with some figures. But given that's one of the three kind of key bubbles, I couldn't see anything but talk to that specifically. And I may be misunderstanding what's intended here, but I want to ask.
Yeah, I obviously in the bubbles we've somewhat got what our aims are and breaking that down from the general thing, and then below it's about what we actually do, so if it's talking about stewardship, one key obvious thing is whether we're compliant with codes of practice in what we do with our treasury management. And in terms of asset management and gap that's existed in the past that we've been trying to address, have we got a clear understanding of our assets and a plan for how we manage them and take them forward? So I think that's what it's trying to get to. And if I were to say to you, in terms of some of these areas, when we look at what's happening around the world, what would you write down as the exact delivery that you'd hope your treasury management policy would deliver in the 12 months ahead? I think you would be anxious that it was doing the right things, that it was doing it in a considered way, but it would be very hard, whether it's war events or tariff events or all sorts of things, to be precise about what your expected and reasonable outturn would be before it's begun, because it's impacted by external events.
All fairly at one level, and what I'm curious about, say you mentioned the Treasury Code of Practice. We know from the conversation we've had about this that we understand there is a gap between, say, code practice and, say, I can't remember what is it SIPSA or something? I can't remember SIPSA, thank you. We know that doesn't match the aspirations that we've talked about, and Simon indeed has talked about. So I guess what I'm interested in is, how do we know that we're going into it's a bit like saying the net zero stuff, which isn't statutory in many ways, but we're doing it. So I guess I'm thinking, well, how does that fit here? How do we know that? And all those global events, absolutely fine. But how do we know, if you like, we've done what we said we were going to try and do this year compared to last year or whatever? I just couldn't see it there, given it's one of the big bubbles that looked throughout the report, and it seems like consistent that they are on the left-hand side.
I think we would accept as a council we can't do something which GIPFA or is not generally recognised as reasonable practice, even though we might say, hang on, we would like a little bit more weight on ESG, but obviously, you know, we've got those issues about security and liquidity, as well as yield and so forth. So we've got to have a compliant approach, if you like. I understand the points that you're making, but I think in a way that might be more about us putting to SIPFA that they might appraise some of those considerations.
Okay. Right. Go on briefly.
I appreciate that, and the reason I'm just asking again is because it is one of our three bubbles at the top. So I take that as one of the important ones, and I'd like to see something in there that talks to that. That's all I'm saying. And if it's just, if there is nothing to talk about, then, you know, should it be in the bubbles? Very happy to take that offline as well, because I think you understand what I'm very happy to be collaborative about resolving that as well.
Yeah, it could say something perhaps as well as compliance. It could say and to progress ESG within reasonable parameters.
Or what we've done with our investors, like Link, or whatever. It's just it's actions, isn't it? We're talking about here that back up those bigger statements. Thank you, Chair, for your patience.
No, that's fine. Any other questions? I've got a couple I want to ask. Any others? Okay, well, one thing I did want to ask, I'm really glad to hear that Councillor Owain talk about this in terms of action. So actually making sure that the council is not a zombie council. It's absolutely not what we want them to be. But I just wanted to think about and whether you can just clarify how the impact of that, how you see this plan in terms of the impact of LGR, so local government organisation. Is it a live plan? Will you be changing it? If you are changing it in the light of LGR, how will you ensure that you're still aligning with the council policies, etc., the impact of that? You say it's budgeted for, which is good, and I know it is. If you need to bring in extra resources to deliver this because some other resources are taken off LGR, what will that imply? And I think it goes back to, I think it's Councillor Khan saying, are there some actions that are more of a priority than others? What will you drop, in other words, or will you bring in other resources? So how has this been planned, and what is your plan to implement it as much as possible?
In some ways, that might be more of a question for Tim than for me. But I think there are some things which LGR does make it very difficult for us. If we were making a 5-year export decision or strategy, which bound future councils, I think that would, as an investment or whatever, that might be a challenging thing for Nick as our monitoring officer and for Simon Hughes to sign off as being a proper thing to do. On the other hand, we don't want to, bouncing off that, lurch into the other extreme, which is the zombie that just shuffles along until the bell rings. I don't think that's where we want to be either. So it's steering a sensible course between those two. There plainly is going to be LGR implications on officers' time, but that's as far as I can perhaps take it. Tim might know more detail.
Okay, so we go to Councillor Owain first.
Yeah, I think this is justifiably big picture stuff, isn't it? Yeah, we can't pretend that LGR is not happening. And the first meeting I went to with somebody who'd gone through this process 3 times already, he said, "This is now your day job, preparing for LGR." And I don't totally agree with him on that. And within the context that LGR is happening and what we know about it so far, this is the plan that our officers feel that we have the resources to deliver. Now, one thing we know about all plans and all budgets is that they're wrong on day publication +1, and stuff will happen. We're cognizant of the risks. The first thing that could happen is that the government does seem to be making it up as they go along. And so they might come out with you need to do this now, and we need to throw people at doing that. The other thing that can go wrong is inherently when an organisation is coming to the end of its life, staff will start looking for other jobs. We know that. We'll do our best to keep them and to make them happy and to give them challenges and reasons to stay. But we know that over the next 2 years, people are going to get offered other jobs, which will be more secure than the one we have, and it will be really difficult for us to recruit. So that is one risk I would highlight that says we might not be able to achieve all of this. But that said, and knowing that those things can happen and the outside world can happen, there's all sorts of horrible stuff going off in the Middle East at the moment, which might impact on the economy and our ability to deliver. But based on what we know now and reasonable expectations of what's going to happen, this is what officers have come forward and said, look, we can deliver this in the next year. And we'll quiz them on that. And as times change, we'll quiz them on that. But that was the brief, was looking at our 4-year plan and looking at what we know is happening with, particularly with local government reorganisation. What can we reasonably put into our plan for this year? And we think that's what we've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, not much more to add to that. Is given the correct answer that we prepared that earlier or anything. I would say in terms of as a senior management team, that's obviously our everyday role in terms of managing the resource and the activities that we have. So in anything that's in there at the moment, as you said, we've got the annual review process. So even as part of that, there will still be I suppose we've done a rigorous prioritisation now. We'll have to do that as we go through in terms of, again, like I said, whatever comes on in year that we may need to then review and say, okay, that's going to have to be given a bit more priority depending on where we are with things such as LGR coming on board, to then see what may need to either be paused or put to the back foot, if you like, for a while. As we have been to work on the plan, there may be some things that come on new that we then take on, and maybe some things that we have to stop. But again, this is what we put, I suppose, for the way ahead for the next year. We'll then say now for year 2.
Thank you. And my second question was very specific, actually. Looking at the yellow bit, so strategic priority on homes and infrastructure that meet local needs. There's a point there about Broadway demolition and planning and design and build. And measure is Broadway redevelopment project to deliver affordable flats and ground floor community space. I'm seeing that as you expect it to be built by the end of this year. Is that correct? Because I'm not quite sure what the target is there. It's quite broad. It says 116, 118 Broadway design and build. So I'm assuming then that will be finished by the end of 2026. Is that right? March 2026. I'm questioning that.
Yeah, we'll have to go away and see where that is. But I suppose in terms of with projects as specific as that, I suppose there will be all at different points in their life cycle as a project. So again, with that, it may be either at the design or a stage in there. what we'll be able to actually do and get on that is a bit of a narrative, and then show, like you said, with the baseline, where is that at the start, and then we'll be able to show what that progress looks like.
Okay.
That's a
But I think going back to what we said earlier, we're looking at thinking maybe there should be some target or something that we can measure against in terms of this year. I know that there's a wider one.
Yeah. I would say, actually, bearing in mind it's an annual target, that there's an implication that it might go beyond the end of the year, isn't there? Because it's saying narrative. I mean, how can you could create some artificial measure, but how can you precisely say you're with that much % there or on the project?
Well, that's
you can describe where we've got to and whether we're on track to get to where we want to go.
And where do you want to go? You know, what is your target you want to get to? Exactly. So that's what I'm asking you. That's the capital topic. Did you want to
just to follow up on what you just said, Chair? I noticed that it's touched on already, but just to reiterate, really, on climate change and nature recovery as well. It felt like there's a mix of targets and milestones and measures, and I think it would be quite helpful if we could be distinguished between those things. Basically, what are the targets for each year as opposed to what the measures are. I just noticed that there didn't seem to be consistency in how we report to follow. You know, for example, you've got in the first row about decarbonisation. It's very specific, 100% and 9 homes. Whereas if we go down further, then the next line down, the net zero program says RAG. I understand why there's a difference. I think it's just being really what's the measure and what's the target of that measure. Measure that target. There you go.
This is slightly pernickety, these, so apologies in advance, but on page 22 on the housing area, it talks about increased delivery and acquisition of affordable housing. As a sort of sentence, that doesn't make any sense. I'm assuming that there are two aims there. One is to increase delivery of affordable housing, presumably by housing associations and their private partners. And the second is acquisition of affordable housing, presumably by this council. Yeah, and that is a completely separate thing. And I don't think you can have those in the same sentence. It doesn't make any sense as written. I would also add the word Didcot to Broadway. I know that's in Didcot, the Broadway, but others may not. But I think getting back to affordable housing, I work in housing, that's what I do for a living. And my private housing clients are really struggling at the moment because housing associations don't have any money. And part of their problems is that they are coming onto massive amounts of refurbishment of the stock that they already own. They are having to deal with the post-Grenfell Tower problems with cladding, and a lot of private affordable developments are slowing down because housing associations cannot or will not make offers for the 40% affordable housing. And if they are making offers, they're much lower than they used to be. So this opens up two situations. One, housing isn't being delivered, particularly smaller schemes. Housing associations are basically saying, don't want to get involved.
We come into a question.
Yeah, we are.
I think
Secondly, the pricing of the affordable housing used to be 60-70% of ONV. It's now 50%, which doesn't really cover build cost, let alone anything else. So it's a very good opportunity if the council is to be buying affordable housing. Now's the time.
Yeah.
It really is.
And probably all of that is going to be affected by the announcements that have been made about governmental funding to support affordable housing. If we don't know we've got the detail yet as to what they plan to do with that, but yes, it would feed into that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's going to make the massive change to that whole item, and not something that we as a council, I think, can influence in any meaningful way at all. If the housing association don't have the money, then a lot of these schemes aren't going to get started.
Yeah,
And there's no point just giving more and more planning permissions if we can't deliver the planning permissions that have been given, because housing associations are struggling.
Obviously, a lot of what they also do is reflected by their access to the market debt, to be able to help them fund, together with, where in simple terms, they probably don't pay very much for the land that the homes are built on, but they do bear the cost of building them, and they can get a large percentage of that.
Well, what they do is they buy from the.
Anyway, this is
this is the housing market. Should we have that later or after? Thank you. But it's a good.
Very hard to fix details.
So it's about changes, and you're waiting. Am I right in saying a lot of this will be a moving plan because we were waiting for some government announcements?
I think one point that Christian made, which maybe is worth just thinking about a little bit, is segmenting that by what the council can do directly to purchase units, which may partly depend on what government grants are available, and then what we're trying to bring through the market from delivery of our sites.
I don't quite know how to put that in the recommendation, but maybe you'll help me with that in a minute. Okay. Any other comments, questions, or we can move into looking at those recommendations and agreeing them? Okay, good. Because the obviously the recommendation to Cabinet is to approve the annual delivery plan 25-26, which is underpinned by the Council Plan 25-29. I've just summed up some recommendations here that we're making to Cabinet. So we may be looking at adding more specific targets for the year, so we have something to measure against. Looking at incorporating some sort of trajectory. I take your point that this will probably go on the dashboard and the performance plans, but so that having a trajectory so that we can see the progress made against that and the trajectory of the 2029 targets, if you like, or the aim you want to get to then. Maybe in some ways labelling, if you like, some actions that may be priorities, because we're all aware that there's uncertainty. There's always uncertainty. There's more uncertainty with local government reform possibly. So thinking about maybe some of them will be more important than others, and you'll be willing to drop those or take them forward into the next plan. So maybe labelling that in some ways. And then greater clarity on what success looked like for specific actions. So taking after Gregory's point and Wayne's point about some things may be up and some things may be down. So is there anything else? I couldn't quite get recommendation out of what you were saying, Councillor Topping, so if you want to.
Bit specific.
But okay, maybe that's too specific for a general recommendation to Cabinet. Is there anything else I've missed or greater clarity on any of those needed? And we're happy with all those. There's the recommendation we'll be taking away. I don't think there's a motion there. I can't quite. Don't need to pass a motion here, do we really? We've got the recommendations.
Yeah, just if everyone agrees with research.
Drawing agreement?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And nothing else. I think that's the end of the agenda. Oh, that was, isn't it? Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Owen. Councillor Owen, and thanks for coming.
Let's go to the stream now.
Thanks for explaining it.
When was it?
Nick flashed up.
Oh, Nick, sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Is it? Are we offline now?
Sorry to go to more course of so many leads, which
Offline it.
it's been
Betsy, can you close the stream, please?
Thank you. Thanks for